You can repeat what your wife said word for word and still not have listened to her. That sounds wrong, right? You were quiet. You looked at her. You didn't interrupt. You gave a real response when she finished. And she still says you don't listen? So either she's being unreasonable, or what you've been calling listening is not what she's actually measuring. You stayed in the room. Your eyes were on her. But where did your attention go 3 sentences in? Because there's a difference between following the words and actually letting them land. And you might not know which one you've been doing. Look at the proof you've been using. Just lay it out. You don't interrupt. You wait. You let her talk. You hold eye contact. You're not on your phone. You're not staring past her at the TV. You can repeat what she said. If she stopped in the middle and asked, you could say it back almost word for word. When she finishes, you say something real, not a grunt. Not okay, a real response that connects to what she just said. And you do this every time. You're not a man who checks out. You show up for the conversation. That's 5 things, 5 solid pieces of proof. And not one of them tells you whether what she's saying is something you're actually letting in. All of that proves you followed what she said. It doesn't prove it got into you before you started building your side of it. You were quiet, yes. But being quiet and taking it in are not the same thing. That's the gap. You're not ignoring her. The gap is between following her words and actually letting them land. You can pass every surface test of being a good listener and still leave your wife talking to a man who checked out the second her words got close to something he'd have to feel or face or let change him. So yeah, the proof looks good. Until you asked the one question it can't answer. Where was your attention while she was still talking? Here is how a decent husband ends up here without even realizing it. When your wife starts talking about something that involves you, it's usually not a light conversation. She may be hurt. She may be talking about something you did or didn't do or got wrong. And you've been through enough of these to know one bad response can make the next hour or the next 2 days a whole lot worse. So while she's talking, your mind starts doing what a lot of men's minds do under pressure. It starts sorting. What's fair here? What's missing? What you actually agree with? What you need to push back on before this turns into a story about you that doesn't feel true. And that sorting feels like work, because it is. You're not checked out. You're locked in. You're listening closely enough to catch the line you'll need to answer, and you're already shaping a response that doesn't make things worse. You're trying to be accurate. You're trying to be fair to her and fair to yourself at the same time. From your side, that doesn't feel like dodging. It feels like taking the conversation seriously enough not to screw it up. And under all of that, you're not trying to beat your wife. You're trying not to be misunderstood. You want her to have the full picture before she decides what this says about you, because once she decides, it can feel impossible to walk it back. From your side, explaining yourself doesn't feel like dodging. It feels like asking to be seen fairly. Wednesday night, kitchen table. She starts telling you about something that happened at work. A guy she respects talked over her in a meeting in front of everybody, and it made her feel small. She's not asking you to fix it. She just wants to say it somewhere that feels safe. 3 sentences in, you already know what kind of story this is. You've heard some version of it before. And your mind does what it always does. You start building your answer. You sort her words as they come in. Part of you agrees. Part of you thinks she might be reading too much into it. So now you're lining up a response that sounds supportive, but also fair. By the time she gets to the part that really matters, where her voice slows down and the sentence gets harder to finish, you're not with her anymore. You're in your own head, working on what you're going to say. She finishes. You answer right away. Your response is organized. It fits. You even use her exact words back to her. You are quiet. You followed it. You can repeat it. But she felt the difference. She felt you leave around the 3rd sentence. Not with your eyes. Not physically. With your attention. And the speed of your answer gave it away. If you had really been sitting with what she said, you would have needed a second before you spoke. Maybe 2. You didn't. You were already building your response while she was still talking. She says, okay, and clears the place. You answered the story, but you didn't take in what she was really bringing you. And that's the part that matters. Did you actually hold what she came to you with? Or did you just move the conversation along so you could get out of it? Run that forward 6 months. That Wednesday at the kitchen table happens again. Then again. A version of it happens Sunday morning. Another one happens in the car. And every time you do what you do. You stay quiet. You track the words. You give the organized answer. And every time she feels the same small thing you don't feel. So she starts adjusting. Not in some obvious way you could point to. She just starts telling the version of the story that fits what she knows you'll do with it. The longer version, the one with the weight under it, the part where her voice would slow down. She keeps that to herself, not to punish you, just because it's easier. She's learned that when she gives you the full version, it comes back sorted, answered, and a little corrected. So now she cuts it down before she even says it. A few months in, this just becomes normal. She tells you what happened at work in 2 sentences instead of 10. She leaves out how it made her feel. She gets to the practical stuff faster. When something really hurts her, she says it once, lightly, usually with a disclaimer in front of it, and drops it the second you start explaining. From your side, it feels easier. She seems more concise, less intense. You might even think you've both gotten better at this. Fewer hard talks. Fewer moments where you have to defend yourself. So you read the quiet as progress. But look at what's really happening. She stopped bringing you the real version because the real version kept going nowhere with you. She's still in the room. She still talks to you at dinner. But the woman who used to hand you the unedited thing, she learned to hand you something smaller. By the time the complaints stop, the part of her that was still trying to reach you may have stopped too. The old measure was simple. You stayed quiet. You kept track of the words. You gave a clean answer that showed you heard her. By that measure, you've been listening to your wife for years. You can point to all kinds of conversations where you showed up, stayed calm, and said something thoughtful back. But that measure only tells you what came out of your mouth after she finished. It doesn't tell you where your attention was while she was still talking. Were you actually with her, letting her words land before you move? Or were you already in your own head, lining up your reply, sorting out what was fair, getting ready to come out of it sounding reasonable? From the outside, those two things look the same. Both look like a man sitting there quietly. Only one is real listening. Here's the thing. The test isn't your response. It's that second, right after she stops talking. If you already know what you're going to say the moment she finishes, you weren't listening. You were drafting. If there's a beat where her words are still hitting you and you haven't pulled yourself together yet, that's usually the moment she actually got through to you. What felt like a conversation may have just been you running your own monologue in your head while her voice stayed off to the side. So don't just ask whether you heard her. You explained your side. But the next time she brought something to you, she either brought more of it or she brought less. That tells you whether you actually got what she was trying to say. Pause equals 2.5 seconds.
You scrolled past the last one of these. She raised the same thing twice this month, and you scrolled past that too. Subscribe now before this becomes another habit you can't see in yourself.